Welcome back to the deep dive. If you are a guitarist and you've been tracking the just wild evolution of modern gear, you know the holy grail right now isn't a new tube amp, it's the perfect ampless setup. And that pursuit, it always seems to force this choice, you know? Either you get these massive professional modelers that do everything, or you get small, focused pedals that usually compromise on tone.
There's always a trade-off.
Always. But today, we're diving deep into a device that really sits right in that sweet spot, right between those two extremes. It's the BLSS IR200 amp and IR cabinet platform.
Yeah.
This is a pedal that fits in your coat pocket, but it promises to replace an amp head, a 4x12 cabinet, and maybe $5,000 worth of studio microphones.
It's a big promise.
It is. So our mission here is to synthesize the architecture, the tonal capabilities, and the practical reasons why this compact platform is, well, changing how working musicians gig and record.
I think what's essential to grasp right away is the strategic category the IR200 occupies. It came out in 2021 as part of the BRSS 200 series. It's an amp modeler, yes, but critically, it's also a high-fidelity DI preamp and an impulse response, or IR, cabinet loader.
And we should probably define that key piece of jargon right there. Impulse responses, IRs.
Right, so IRs are, they're essentially sonic snapshots. Think of them like data files that capture the complete acoustic signature of a specific amplifier cabinet.
Mic'd up in a pro studio.
Mic'd perfectly in a professional room, exactly. So you can load in 1,000 different IRs to capture the sound of, say, a vintage cab mic'd with a ribbon microphone 6 inches off the cone.
And the IR200 is built specifically to handle that kind of high-end capture.
It is. It doesn't try to compete with those massive units that have hundreds of effects. Its core focus is super streamlined, delivering an exceptional amp tone, feel, and a professional workflow.
So it's about the fundamentals.
Absolutely. It combined 4 key professional elements. Carefully voiced bias amp models, that user-loadable IR capability we just mentioned, flexible routing, and comprehensive MIDI control. That focused combination is why it's hailed as a true amp replacement pedal for professional use.
Okay, so let's unpack that core foundation. What allows this relatively compact unit to sound and feel so utterly professional? How does it bridge that gap between digital convenience and, that analog response?
It absolutely comes down to the high-resolution DNA, and this is where the technical specs really do matter to the player. We're talking about high-resolution digital amp modeling paired with 32-bit internal processing.
So why should you care about 32-bit processing? What does that actually mean?
It translates directly into dynamic range. It means the unit can capture the massive difference in volume and harmonic complexity between a feather-light pick attack and a crushing heavy strum.
The headroom.
The headroom, exactly. It prevents the sound from collapsing or distorting digitally when you really hit the strings hard. The sonic reality is just that the dynamic scale is wider, and that makes the unit feel less compressed and much more amp-like.
That dynamic fidelity is so crucial, and it's supported by the other professional specs. We're seeing an ultra-low noise floor, which is essential for studio work, and a dedicated full stereo signal path.
Yeah, that stereo path is huge.
If you're running complex ambient effects, delays, reverbs, that stereo capacity means you aren't just collapsing your massive, lush sound into a thin mono signal at the very end of the chain.
And the architecture ensures these two critical components work as a unified system. The amp model and the dedicated cabinet IR convolution engine are designed to interact seamlessly.
So it's not just one thing after another in a chain?
No, it's not just chaining two effects blocks. They are optimized to interact. If you want the depth and space of a real, perfectly mic'd cabinet, you need that synergy to produce the kind of tone that sits perfectly in a mix or rings true through a large PA system.
That solid architecture, it brings us directly to the tonal voices. The IR200 gives you 11 distinct amp types. I love that it's 11, not 100. It suggests, a curated selection. Why these specific 11?
Exactly. The source material really emphasizes this was a strategic choice. You are not getting analysis paralysis here.
Right.
What you are getting are the historical bedrock amplifiers that have defined, recorded, and live guitar tone for the last 60 years. These 11 models, they cover about 90% of what any touring or session musician actually needs.
So let's walk through that roster. For the foundational American clean and edge tones, you're starting with the twin combo.
the classic.
The classic, pristine American clean sound. Then the deluxe combo for that perfect edge of breakup Fender-style crunch. And finally, the tweed, which gives you that vintage sag and grit that responds so well to your volume knob.
Then you jump across the Atlantic to the British and natural amp. So you get the Diamond, offering that brilliant, chimey British clean sound, followed by the standard crunch model for classic British overdriven rock.
And then the big ones.
Right. Crucially, they included the MS 1959 Ion 2, covering those legendary Plexi and JCM-style voices that defined hard rock and metal in the 70s and 80s.
And for the player who just wants a blank slate, there's that natural model,
which is designed to be ultra clean, pure headroom. It acts as the perfect pedal platform.
Then finally, you've got the heavy hitters for modern applications.
The high gain spectrum.
Okay.
It includes the Brown, which is sort of a hot-rodded vintage gain, the X-High gain for just pure modern aggression, and the RFI or vintage in modern versions.
Which capture those essential rectifier-inspired high-gain sounds.
Exactly.
And what's great is that for every single one of these 11 amps, you get a full control set. It's not stripped down.
Not at all.
You have your gain, the standard bass, middle, and treble EQ, plus a presence knob and a master level. That level of detailed control over the amp's inherent character is crucial.
And that detailed amp control then feeds directly into the massive customization you get from the cabinet section. I mean, while the unit provides excellent built-in cabinets, the standard 1x8, 1x10, 1x12, 2x12, and 4x12 configurations voiced optimally for each amp type, the true liberation for you comes from that user IR loading via USB.
This is the game changer.
It really is. I mean, think about it. You can pair your perfect Plexi model with an IR file that specifically captures a rare 1970s greenback 4x12 mic'd with a Neumann U47 microphone. This is what lifts the IR200 to professional status.
It's total customization.
It allows you to utilize boutique cab IRs, studio-grade third-party libraries, giving you the flexibility to sound exactly like the specific recording rig you love, regardless of who makes the core amp model.
And they took the fine-tuning for realism even further with dedicated mic and room controls. You're not just picking a cabinet sound, you're shaping the whole environment.
Yeah, you can simulate subtle mic position changes, control the mic distance, and add a stereo room ambient simulation.
Which means you're dialing in the realism of the recording environment inside the pedal, rather than relying solely on post-production DAW plugins to add those subtle spatial cues.
Precisely.
Yes.
And that control over realism ties directly into the feel of the unit, which, I mean, for any guitarist, that's the make or break metric.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, because the spec sheet is one thing, but how does the IR200 feel under the fingers? Boss has emphasized core characteristics like realistic amp feel, natural dynamic response, and touch sensitivity.
And the feedback from users coming from traditional tube amps has been overwhelmingly positive. The sources highlight a significant tonal improvement compared to older generations of BAW-SS modeling, like the previous CISM unit.
Ah, COSM. For those unfamiliar, COSM stands for Composite Object Sound Modeling. It was BAW-S's earlier digital technology.
Right, and what the IR200 does differently is that the tone is specifically described as sounding more open, more immediate, less compressed, and simply more amp-like under the fingers.
That distinction between modeling a sound and modeling an experience is key.
It is. Take the dynamic response, for example.
Yeah.
In the analog world, if you are playing through a dirty amp and you roll your guitar's volume knob back from 10 to 6, the amp cleans up. A poor digital model either stays distorted or it just gets quieter. The IR200, because of that 32-bit processing and modeling fidelity, it actually cleans up and responds harmonically to your playing nuance. Just like a tube amp. It makes you feel connected to the sound source.
So if we...
Always. The engineering here ensures that low end is kite. It doesn't flub out or sound muddy. That clear articulation means that even with highly saturated modern rock or metal tones, you can still hear the distinct notes in complex chords.
And this is where a fantastic, tight, high-gain IR selection really completes the picture.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, all that tone is great, but its value is limited if you can't integrate it into a real-world professional setup.
Which leads us directly into workflow, starting with connectivity.
Right. The routing options are incredibly flexible. Mono into mono, mono into stereo, and full stereo into stereo. This is built for the stage where signal flexibility is just mandatory.
And it's designed to live harmoniously with the rest of your pedal board. You have flexible pre-post routing options for external effects and full FX loop integration.
So you can put it anywhere.
This versatility means you can place it at the end of your chain, use it as a standalone amp, or rely on it as a direct-to-FOH solution, FOH meaning front of house, the main PA system at a venue.
And consistency is absolutely king when you're touring. If you dial in the perfect sound during sound check, you need to recall it instantly later that night or weeks later in a different city.
Okay, that brings up a point of contention I see sometimes. The IR200 only has 4 accessible onboard presets. For a professional gigging musician running complex set lists, isn't that a massive limitation if they aren't using MIDI?
That's a great challenge, and it really shows where Boss S made a conscious design choice. The 4 onboard slots are for quick access: your clean, your crunch, your lead, and maybe an ambient patch.
The essentials.
The essentials. However, the system expands massively to 128 presets via full MIDI implementation.
Okay.
For the touring professional, 128 recall slots is more than enough for a large set list. They rely on the MIDI implementation program change and control change to integrate the IR200 into their master control system.
And so every one of those 128 presets stores everything.
Everything. The amp model, the specific EQ settings, the cabinet or IR selection, the mic and room parameters, and the output level. Everything you dial in is locked and ready for instant recall via that single MIDI cable.
That makes perfect sense. The 4 slots are for simplicity, but the 128 via MIDI are for the professional touring requirement.
Exactly.
Plus, the MIDI also allows you to assign an expression pedal to control parameters like gain, output level, EQ, or even blend between 2 different cabs, which allows for seamless real-time sound sculpting during a song.
It's all about professional integration.
So let's tie this to the learner's immediate relevance. Who is this actually for? We identified 5 core use cases that really demonstrate its value. First and most obvious, pedal board amp replacement.
Yep.
It goes last in the chain and feeds a PA system, an FRFR speaker, or directly into a recording interface. It is your amp. Second, the silent stage. This is vital for modern touring, especially for worship musicians or large acts that rely on in-ears. The pedal provides consistent tone night to night and eliminates stage volume issues, making the sound engineer's job much easier at FOH.
Third, it's a perfect recording tool. Zero latency tracking and the elimination of mic bleed headaches are massive advantages in a home or project studio setting.
Oh, yeah.
I remember spending hours getting mic position perfect only to have spill from the drums ruin the take. This solves that instantly.
And fourth, the concept of fly rigs.
This is huge. When you are traveling internationally, having a lightweight, compact, and reliably direct solution is mandatory. You can't trust the quality or maintenance of backline rental amps.
But you know your IR200 will deliver your tone consistently, and it fits right into your carry-on luggage.
That shift from lugging 2 4x12 cabs to carrying a pedal board is revolutionary.
And finally, the hybrid rigs use case. Because of the stereo routing, you can run a traditional real amplifier on one output and the IR cab simulation on the other simultaneously.
Which gives the sound engineer the best of both worlds. The air movement from your stage amp, and a perfectly consistent mic'd signal from the pedal.
A very comprehensive look at its utility. But we have to weigh the pros against the considerations.
Of course. While the list of pros is phenomenal, excellent amp feel, IR loading, stereo operation, 128 presets, quiet performance, we must be transparent about what it intentionally leaves out.
Exactly. I want to push back on the design choice here. For a single unit amp replacement, why didn't Boss S add some essential utility effects? No onboard delay, no reverb. Was that purely a cost-saving measure, or does adding more processing actually compromise the core goal of perfect amp tone?
That's the critical question. And the sources confirm that this was absolutely a strategic design decision, not just cost-saving. Every bit of the available processing power, that 32-bit engine, is dedicated to the fidelity of the amp and cabinet simulation.
So it's a focus thing.
It's all about focus. If they had introduced a digital reverb or delay chip, it would consume processing overhead that could potentially compromise the dynamic response or introduce latency into the core amp modeling.
That makes sense.
The IR200 is built for players who already own high-quality effects pedals and just need the best possible foundation for their tone. The limitations, no built-in effects, fewer amp models than flagship units, and reliance on USB for IR management are simply trade-offs for achieving that unparalleled sonic focus and fidelity in a small footprint.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the IR200 is more than just a piece of gear. It represents BOS's modern answer to the ampless dilemma.
It really does.
It closes the gap between the sound quality of massive rack units and the size of a simple stomp box. It effectively bridges the technology gap between their early digital amp modeling, those old Cryo-SM-based pedals we mentioned, and the giant, full GT series modelers.
And that device aligns perfectly with the current industry shift toward silent stages, direct recording, and the demand for portable rigs that deliver consistent touring tone.
That consistency is truly the gold standard for working musicians today.
That cultural alignment explains its high adoption profile. It is the pedal of choice for touring professionals, worship musicians, session players, and fly date performers, precisely because it excels at being one focused thing. A reliable, great-sounding amp replacement that delivers amp realism without unnecessary complexity or compromised fidelity.
That brings us to the end of our deep dive. We've covered the technical summary. 11 strategically chosen amp models, robust user IR support, up to 128 presets via MIDI, and flexible professional routing all in a compact form factor. The core insight here is that the IR200 isn't about having infinite effects. It's about perfecting the foundation of your tone, the amplifier, and the cabinet simulation, and doing it with professional-grade dynamic feel.
And this raises an important question for you, the learner, to consider. Given the IR200's documented success in replacing traditional amplifiers for touring professionals, allowing them to skip the wait, the maintenance, and the inconsistency, how much longer will the psychological or practical need for dedicated, large-scale amplifier hardware truly outweigh the portability and tone consistency offered by high-resolution digital tools like this?
A great question. The future of the backline might just be the lightweight pedal you throw in your backpack.